The alien arrival. The sky over Earth was clear, a brilliant blue stretching across the horizon. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. Without warning, the first of the alien ships entered the atmosphere, its massive form blotting out the sun. It was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Sleek, black, and glowing with strange energy. It wasn't alone. Soon, a fleet of these ships appeared, spreading across the sky like a dark storm. The world's governments scrambled to respond. Military forces mobilized, but it quickly became clear that they were no match for the advanced technology of the alien invaders. The ships hovered over major cities, their presence casting a heavy shadow over the earth. People gazed up at the sky in awe and fear, unsure of what would come next. The aliens had been silent at first, not giving any sign of their intentions. Was it an invasion? A peaceful contact? No one knew. The entire planet held its breath, waiting. Governments met in secret, trying to decipher the motives of these mysterious visitors. News channels broadcasted endless speculation, but the truth was, no one had any answers. In a small military command center, General Alvarez stared at the screen in front of him, tracking the alien ships as they floated above major cities like New York, Paris, and Beijing. The silence from the invaders was unsettling. No demands had been made. No messages had been received. It was almost as if they were studying Earth, observing its inhabitants, waiting for something. What do they want? Alvarez muttered, more to himself than to anyone in the room. The tension was palpable. The world was on edge. Then, the communication came. It wasn't a message like anyone had expected. There was no formal greeting or demand. Instead, an image appeared on every screen across the planet. A single alien, standing tall in its dark armor, spoke in a language that was completely unfamiliar. His voice was deep, chilling, and carried an air of superiority. "The hunt begins," the alien said, his words somehow resonating in every human's mind, as if spoken directly to them. The message was brief, and the tone was cold. The message ended, leaving the world in stunned silence. At first, people didn't understand what it meant. But then the terror began to spread. The aliens had come for a purpose, and it wasn't peaceful. Earth was not the place of a diplomatic meeting, nor were they here for trade. The aliens had come for one reason: to hunt. Panic swept through the world like wildfire. Governments rushed to secure their borders, but it was too late. The alien ships began to descend, selecting specific human targets as if they were choosing prey. Soldiers, civilians, anyone who could be taken. The aliens moved quickly, using advanced technology to capture humans with little effort. No one was prepared for this. The humans had no idea that they were being hunted, but the aliens were about to learn that underestimating humanity would be their biggest mistake. In every corner of the world, people were taken. But as the first humans were captured and the alien ships began their ruthless search for more, something started to shift. The world's governments began to rally. The military fought back, and ordinary citizens began to rise up against their captors. General Alvarez, standing in the command center, finally understood the aliens' intentions. It was not a simple invasion. They wanted to hunt humanity like animals, taking those they deemed fit for sport and leaving the rest behind. It was the perfect strategy for an alien race that saw humans as nothing more than prey. But what the aliens didn't realize was that humanity had something they didn't: unity. Humans had a strength the aliens could not possibly understand, and the hunt they had planned would not go as they expected. As the first victims of the alien attack were taken, a strange feeling began to settle over the earth. It wasn't fear anymore. It was something else. It was the feeling of defiance. Humanity wasn't going to roll over and become prey. They would fight. They would survive. And soon, the aliens would learn just how deadly the humans could be. The clock was ticking. The alien fleet had arrived, but they had no idea what was waiting for them on Earth. A storm was coming, and it would be one the aliens would never forget. The unexpected resistance. The world was still reeling from the shock of the aliens' arrival. Across the globe, chaos reigned. People fled their homes, seeking refuge in underground bunkers and fortified shelters. Major cities became battlegrounds, with civilians caught in the crossfire of a war they never expected to fight. Governments and military leaders scrambled to strategize, but none of them had the knowledge or technology to face an invasion like this. Meanwhile, the alien ships continued their systematic search for prey, swooping down to capture human victims with cold efficiency. They employed weapons that seemed to defy physics, stunning their targets into submission before whisking them away to their ships. The aliens' superior technology made it clear that they were not only hunters, they were predators, playing a game that no one on Earth had ever been prepared for. As cities fell under alien control, whispers of a resistance began to spread. It started in small pockets, groups of soldiers, survivalists, and civilians who refused to go down without a fight. These humans had no illusions about the odds they were facing. The alien invaders were far superior in every way, with their advanced weapons and ships that defied any earthly logic. But there was one thing the humans had that the aliens didn't: sheer willpower. And with that, they began to resist. In a makeshift command center deep underground in the remains of what was once New York City, a small group of survivors gathered. General Alvarez, who had been overseeing the global defense efforts, was there, grim but determined. His team was a ragtag group, a mixture of military officers, engineers, and civilians, all with one common goal: to stop the alien hunters before they wiped out humanity. "We need a plan," Alvarez said, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to pick us off one by one." A young engineer named Lisa, who had once worked on experimental technology before the invasion, stepped forward. "We may not have their weapons, but we do have something they don't expect: our creativity. I think I have a way to fight back." Lisa explained that she had been working on a weapon designed to disrupt the alien ship's technology. It was a long shot, but if it worked, it could give them the upper hand. The problem was, they needed time to build it, and time was something they didn't have. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Lisa continued, her eyes burning with determination. "We need to cripple their ships, disrupt their communication, and make them think twice before coming back for more." Alvarez nodded, impressed by the courage and ingenuity of the group. "All right, we'll do it your way. But we need a diversion. Something to keep the aliens busy while we work." Across the globe, similar discussions were taking place. In hidden bunkers, makeshift resistance groups were organizing guerrilla-style attacks. They targeted the alien supply lines, sabotaged their equipment, and used any means they could to slow the predators down. Despite their limited resources, humanity had one key advantage: a deep, unyielding desire to survive. They would not go quietly into the night. As the days passed, humanity's resistance grew stronger. News of the attacks spread like wildfire, bringing hope to a world that had been on the brink of surrender. The aliens, accustomed to being the apex predators, had never faced anything like this before. For the first time, they were on the defensive. The idea that humans, a species they had considered nothing more than prey, could fight back was an unexpected shock to the invaders. However, despite their growing numbers, the resistance knew the aliens were far from defeated. They had to strike hard and fast before the invaders could regroup. The clock was ticking, and the survival of the human race depended on the success of their counterattack. As General Alvarez and his team worked tirelessly to complete the weapon, the aliens began to adjust their tactics. They understood that their prey wasn't as helpless as they had thought. It was becoming clear that Earth was no longer the hunting ground they had imagined. In fact, the tables were beginning to turn. The fight for Earth had only just begun, and the fate of humanity rested on the shoulders of those who refused to give up. The aliens had underestimated them, and now they would learn that humans were not to be taken lightly. The battle begins. The days following the formation of humanity's resistance were tense, filled with the quiet hum of preparation, and the distant rumblings of conflict. Every resistance cell around the world was in motion, doing what they could to fight back against the alien invaders. Some attacked supply lines, others sabotaged alien communications, while a few focused on trying to gather information on the invaders' weaknesses. And in underground command centers, like the one in New York, General Alvarez and his team worked tirelessly, building what they hoped would be the weapon that could turn the tide. Lisa's device was nearing completion, but time was not on their side. Alien ships patrolled the skies relentlessly, and every day that passed meant more of humanity's people were taken, either captured as prey or left to die in the wake of the invaders' hunt. Resistance fighters were becoming bolder, but it was clear that they couldn't keep up the guerrilla-style attacks forever. They needed something decisive, something that would make the aliens rethink their entire mission on Earth. Meanwhile, the aliens' relentless hunt continued. Their ships swooped down to the surface, grabbing anyone they could, and leaving nothing but destruction behind. The world's cities had fallen into disarray. Nations once proud and mighty had been reduced to rubble in a matter of weeks, and the alien invaders took no mercy, treating humanity as nothing more than sport. But unbeknownst to them, humanity was changing. The world had learned to adapt quickly. The first few weeks had been filled with chaos and panic, but now people were fighting back. They were no longer frightened animals running from the hunt. They were becoming warriors. In small towns and remote villages, pockets of humanity had regrouped, organizing into forces that had the knowledge and skill to carry out more complex operations. Farmers and engineers turned into soldiers, using their knowledge of the land and makeshift technology to strike at the invaders when they least expected it. What was once considered a small rebellion was now an organized, well-coordinated resistance, and it was gaining momentum. One of the most daring raids happened in the heart of Europe, where a group of resistance fighters managed to infiltrate an alien base. Armed with nothing but explosives and a desire to protect their home, they snuck past alien patrols and sabotaged the alien ship's power sources. In a matter of hours, they crippled an entire fleet of vessels, sending shockwaves through the alien ranks. The aliens had never anticipated that humans would have the skills to strike at them in such an efficient way. The resistance fighters had given them a taste of what was to come. Back in New York, General Alvarez and his team had finished their work on the device. The weapon was crude but effective. It was designed to send a pulse of electromagnetic energy capable of disrupting the alien ship systems. If it worked, it could cripple their fleet and force them to retreat. But the risk was immense. One wrong move, and the weapon could backfire, making it even easier for the aliens to wipe out the resistance. "Is it ready?" Alvarez asked, his voice steady, but the weight of the decision hanging heavily on him. Lisa, standing beside the large machine, nodded. "It's as ready as it's going to be," she said, her eyes focused on the device. "But once we launch it, there's no going back." Alvarez took a deep breath. "Then let's do it." As the final preparations were made, resistance fighters all over the world prepared for their next big move. They knew the attack on the alien fleet had to be fast and decisive. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. Then came the signal. It was time. Alvarez and his team, along with a few of the most skilled resistance fighters, were going to deploy the weapon. The rest of the fighters would hold off the alien forces, buying them the precious moments they needed to succeed. The battle for Earth was about to escalate. What started as a desperate fight for survival had now evolved into something much greater. Humanity had shown that they were not to be taken lightly, and the aliens, for the first time, began to realize that they had made a grave mistake underestimating this small, fragile species. With the weapon primed and the resistance in full swing, Alvarez and his team made their way toward the alien ships. The countdown began. As they approached, the sky grew darker with the hovering ships that had terrorized humanity for so long. The first wave of resistance fighters, armed with improvised weapons and sheer courage, clashed with the aliens in a desperate attempt to hold them back. But the aliens had not yet fully realized the depths of humanity's resolve. The humans fought fiercely, with no regard for their own safety. They had already lost so much, and they knew this battle was the only way they could win back their world. And so the fight began. It wasn't a battle of technology. It was a battle of wills. The humans fought like they had nothing to lose because, in a way, they didn't. They had been pushed to the brink, but that had made them stronger. The aliens, on the other hand, had never faced an enemy quite like this. And as the first shots were fired, both sides knew one thing. This was just the beginning. The clash of titans. The pulse of the Resistance's heart was beating faster now. The weapon, still hidden in plain sight, was humanity's last hope. The world's survival rested on the shoulders of General Alvarez, Lisa, and the ragtag group of fighters who had rallied behind them. They had been through so much already: betrayal, loss, endless battles. But this was their final stand. If they failed, Earth would become a graveyard. But they knew the aliens had underestimated them, and now they were going to show just how wrong the invaders were. The night before the final assault, the air was thick with tension. The Resistance fighters, scattered across the world, were making their way to key positions, ready to execute a coordinated attack. Across the globe, there was no more hiding in shadows. The time for secrecy had passed. It was now time to face the aliens head-on. General Alvarez and Lisa stood side by side in the war room, their eyes locked on the massive map of the alien fleet in front of them. "We hit them fast," Alvarez said, his voice cold with determination. "We do not give them a second to regroup. We strike at their most vital assets, their ships, their communication hubs, their command centers. We force them to retreat before they can retaliate." Lisa nodded, her fingers moving over the coordinates on the map. She had spent hours analyzing alien movements, their defenses, and their weaknesses. There was a method to this madness. The weapon was their ace in the hole, but they still had to make sure the aliens were distracted enough to allow it to work. The weapon wasn't designed for a prolonged attack. It was a single, powerful strike that could cripple the alien ships, but only if the timing was perfect. "This is it," Lisa said quietly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes despite the gravity of the situation. "We make this count." The first wave of humanity's resistance fighters was already in position, scattered across key points, ready to fight. From the jungles of South America to the deserts of the Middle East, they were there, waiting. With a single signal, they would move. Then the real battle would begin. The alien ships loomed above the city, like metal behemoths, casting shadows over the streets. Their patrols were relentless, as if they were waiting for humanity to make a move. The soldiers of the Resistance waited in silence, feeling the weight of their mission pressing down on them. Their homes, their families, their very planet was at stake. And then, like the thunder before the storm, the signal came. The Resistance fighters exploded into action. Coordinated strikes hit the alien patrols with precision, disabling their scouts and buying crucial time for the rest of the plan. General Alvarez's forces clashed with the aliens' front lines, overwhelming them with sheer determination. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to organize, to fight as a unit. The initial surprise sent the invaders reeling. But the true weapon, the one that would shake the galaxy, was now in motion. Lisa stood at the heart of the underground base, watching the readings on the monitors. It was time to activate the electromagnetic pulse. The team had already positioned it under a heavily fortified alien communications tower, just outside the enemy's central command. Lisa's fingers hovered over the controls. With one push of a button, the pulse would be unleashed, and the aliens would be crippled. As she pressed down, the pulse shot into the sky. The electromagnetic wave ripped through the atmosphere like a storm, reaching the alien ships with devastating speed. The moment it hit, their systems began to flicker. Communications broke down. The once impenetrable alien fleet suddenly became nothing more than sitting ducks. Ships fell from the sky, one by one, as the pulse fried their circuitry. Their once perfectly synchronized assault became a chaotic disaster. The resistance fighters pushed forward, their weapons now backed by the crippling effects of the pulse. The aliens struggled to regain control, but it was too late. Earth had found its weapon, the willpower of humanity. And now the tide of war was turning. General Alvarez and his team, now riding the momentum of the surprise strike, advanced on the alien command center. They knew that the battle was far from over, but they had succeeded in their first objective. The aliens no longer had the advantage. In the chaos of the battle, the aliens began to realize their fatal mistake. They had underestimated humans. They had come to Earth expecting easy prey. Instead, they had found warriors, fierce, determined, and willing to do anything to protect their home. And with that realization came panic. The aliens knew their invasion was faltering, their prize slipping through their fingers. As the resistance pushed onward, General Alvarez's voice crackled over the comms. "We've got them on the ropes. Keep pushing forward. We end this now." The final push had begun. The alien fleet, once a symbol of terror, was now nothing more than a shadow of its former self. Earth's defenders, humans, were no longer hiding. They had become the hunters. But as the aliens scrambled to regroup, something unexpected happened. In the heart of the chaos, a larger, more menacing alien ship descended from the sky. It was different from the others. It was a massive warship, sleek and powerful, with weapons that could level entire cities. The war had just taken a darker turn. The humans had proven themselves formidable opponents, but now they would face the true wrath of the aliens. The unexpected counterattack. The warship descended from the sky like a shadow of doom. Its dark silhouette blotted out the stars, and a low hum vibrated through the air as its engines powered down, preparing for its descent. General Alvarez, standing at the command center of the human forces, stared at the massive ship on the live feed. The moment it appeared, the battlefield went silent, and every fighter stopped in their tracks. Even the alien forces seemed to hesitate, as if they too recognized the grave shift in momentum. "That ship, it's their command vessel." Lisa's voice came through the comms, sharp and cold. "The rest of their fleet is nothing compared to that thing." Alvarez clenched his fists. The pulse had worked. Their surprise strike had broken the enemy's momentum. But this new ship was a game changer. If they didn't deal with it, everything they had fought for would be lost. He looked at the scattered forces. The resistance had already made huge strides, but the appearance of this warship shifted everything. "We need to rally the troops. We need to strike it before it can mobilize." Lisa, her face grim, nodded. "Agreed. But they'll have heavy defenses. We don't have the luxury of time." The pulse hit them hard. But that ship is going to rally them. If we don't act now, it'll be too late. In that moment, Alvarez felt the weight of their situation press down on him. They had won small battles, but this was the final stand. And the aliens had just revealed their most powerful weapon. From the ground, the resistance fighters could see the warship hovering above them. It loomed, imposing and ominous, casting a heavy shadow over everything below. The alien troops began to regroup, forming ranks and preparing for a counteroffensive. But their hesitation was palpable. They were just as uncertain as the humans. The sheer size and power of their new warship had shaken them. Alvarez quickly gave the order to retreat to the secondary position. The primary base was no longer viable as a target. They would have to take their chances with a direct assault. "Gather your teams," Alvarez barked into the comms. "We're going after that ship." Lisa joined him as they made their way to a heavily armored vehicle, a transport that would take them through the urban maze toward the alien stronghold. They both knew that, if they succeeded, this war could be over. If they failed, if they couldn't stop that warship, they would lose everything. The transport moved swiftly through the city, cutting through the streets. The lights of the battle ahead reflected off the buildings, painting a scene of chaos. Explosions and gunfire lit the sky in brilliant flashes, the cries of soldiers and the hum of alien technology echoing in the distance. Alvarez turned to Lisa, his voice tense. "Do you really think we can take that ship down?" The pulse didn't finish them off. It only disrupted them. Lisa didn't answer immediately. She stared ahead, her mind calculating their options. The pulse was just the first step. "We'll need to hit their weak points, take out their engines, their shields, but we'll need to be fast. If they send reinforcements, we'll be outmatched." The transport barreled onward, and soon they could see the alien warship, its massive size dwarfing everything else around it. Its energy shields pulsed, flickering as if it were preparing for something catastrophic. "We'll need to get in close," Lisa said, her tone sharp. "The weapons we have on the ground won't be enough. We need the pulse weapon again. We can retarget it from the city's communication tower." Alvarez nodded. "We'll go in, make our move, and then get the hell out. It's a one-shot deal." The battle raged on all around them, but now everything seemed to slow down. As the transport drew closer to the heart of the city, the alien forces began to focus all their attention on them. It was as if they knew what was coming. Alvarez's instincts kicked in. "Brace yourselves," he shouted, and the soldiers within the transport readied their weapons. With a sudden, deafening explosion, the transport broke through the last line of alien defense. The human soldiers rushed out, fighting tooth and nail to hold back the alien forces. The sound of blaster fire, energy shields shattering, and screams echoed through the streets. The humans were relentless. They fought for every inch of ground, every moment, and every life. The tide was shifting. With the alien forces distracted by the ambush, Alvarez and his team rushed toward the heart of the city's communications tower. Lisa, leading the way, expertly navigated through the chaotic streets. She didn't look back, not even once. At the base of the communications tower, the team set up their equipment. Lisa ran her fingers over the controls, connecting to the network. The countdown began. They were ready to fire the pulse weapon once more. Time was running out. But as they prepared to launch the attack, something unexpected happened. The massive warship overhead began to glow, its engines roaring to life. It was going to retaliate. "Move. Now," Alvarez shouted. The pulse weapon fired. The blinding light from the tower shot up into the sky, striking the alien warship dead center. The shockwave sent ripples through the air, followed by the sickening sound of something breaking apart. The alien ship trembled as the pulse fried its systems. The energy shields flickered one last time, before they collapsed entirely. The resistance fighters cheered. For a moment, it seemed like they had won. The ship, once a towering symbol of destruction, was now nothing more than a hulking mass of dissolved metal. But before anyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the warship's engines sputtered and fired once more. A blast shot from its core. A final, vengeful move. The battle wasn't over yet. The aliens still had one card left to play. But now, humanity had their chance. With one powerful strike, they had changed the course of the war. The tide was shifting, and the alien invaders were learning the most important lesson of all. Never underestimate humanity. The resistance soldiers took a moment to regroup, but the clock was ticking. The final showdown was coming. The final retaliation. The energy blast from the alien warship echoed through the streets like a thunderclap, rattling the very foundations of the city. Alvarez and his team staggered as the shockwave hit them. The force of the blast sent debris flying, some of it crashing against the walls of nearby buildings. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze, the air thick with dust and smoke, the city on the brink of collapse. Alvarez's heart raced. The pulse weapon had worked. The alien warship had been disabled. But the alien response had been immediate and catastrophic. "Report," he shouted, trying to make himself heard above the chaos. His voice was strained but commanding. Lisa, still crouched behind the cover of the communications tower, gritted her teeth. The pulse worked, but their retaliatory strike, it's massive. It looks like they've initiated their emergency weapon. Something big, something we weren't prepared for. Alvarez clenched his fists. They had just given everything they had to take down that ship, and now it seemed like the aliens were ready to give it all back. "We don't have much time," Lisa continued. "They're going to retaliate with everything they've got. We need to finish them now." The tension was palpable. Humanity had fought for this moment, had bled for it. But now their hardest battle lay ahead. They had temporarily disabled the warship, but the aliens were not done yet. Not by a long shot. Alvarez's mind raced, thinking of their options. They had one shot, just one chance to turn the tide of the battle for good. "Get me the rest of the team," Alvarez ordered. "We need to get to the control center. I have an idea, but it's going to take every ounce of our strength to pull it off." Lisa nodded. "I'll get on it." The soldiers rallied. The once frantic streets had now turned into a battlefield of deadly silence, broken only by the occasional blast of enemy fire and the distant hum of alien ships circling above. The humans moved in close formation, every step calculated, every decision vital. They had come too far to turn back. Within minutes, the team had reached their destination, the heart of the Resistance's command center. Inside, the flickering lights of holographic maps and weapon systems highlighted their way. Alvarez strode forward, heading directly to the central interface, while Lisa coordinated the remaining Resistance fighters, ensuring the perimeter was secured. As Alvarez worked to connect the control systems to the city's defense network, the sound of alien ships overhead grew louder. The warship, though still disabled, wasn't completely out of the fight. Its remaining troops were preparing for a final strike. The aliens would not simply accept defeat, they would destroy Earth or die trying. "We've got one shot at this," Alvarez muttered to himself, fingers flying across the console as he accessed the weapons grid. Lisa's voice crackled in his earpiece. "The warship's shields are down, but they've deployed several smaller ships. It's now or never." Alvarez's mind was working faster than his fingers could move. He could feel the urgency of the moment, the weight of their future resting on his decision. Then his eyes landed on the weapons array, and everything clicked into place. The city's power grid was still intact, and it had one last weapon. A nuclear missile stored deep in the heart of the facility, capable of dealing a decisive blow. But it was risky, and the human casualties could be enormous if the strike didn't go according to plan. But there was no other choice. "Lisa, I need you to reroute the power. I'll launch the missile," Alvarez ordered, his voice calm but resolute. "What? Are you insane? If that thing misfires, it'll take us all out." Lisa's voice was sharp with disbelief. "I know, but it's the only way to finish this." Alvarez didn't wait for a reply. He activated the launch sequence, a countdown flashing across the screen in front of him. The missile would target the heart of the alien warship, the one weak point that had been discovered earlier when the human forces disabled its defenses. He had to hope that their plan was sound. Outside, the alien ships hovered in a tight formation, preparing for their final assault. The Resistance had only minutes before the warship would send everything it had left of them. The missile had to launch first. As the countdown continued, Alvarez stood frozen, his mind focused entirely on the task ahead. Lisa's voice was a distant echo in his earpiece, her tone filled with both worry and determination. The entire city held its breath, waiting for the next move. 10 seconds, Lisa called out. "We don't have much time." The clock on the screen counted down, every second stretching longer than the last. Then, with a deafening noise that shook the walls of the command center, the missile launched. The shockwave of its departure rattled through the air as it sped toward its target. The alien ships above the city seemed to realize what was happening at the last moment. They tried to scramble, to move out of the missile's path, but it was too late. The explosion that followed was like nothing humanity had ever witnessed. The sky lit up with a blinding flash, and the ground trembled as the alien warship was torn apart in an instant. A massive cloud of fire and debris rose into the sky, casting the battlefield in an eerie glow. The remaining alien ships above began to break apart, retreating or falling from the sky in flames. The battlefield fell silent, save for the distant echoes of destruction. Alvarez's heart raced, but he dared not allow himself relief just yet. The victory had come at a high cost. The city was in ruins, the remnants of their homes, and their people scattered across the landscape. Lisa's voice came through, almost faint in his earpiece. "It's over. We did it. We really did it." But Alvarez wasn't ready to accept that yet. There was still too much to rebuild, too many sacrifices to remember. But for now, at least, humanity had proven one undeniable fact to the galaxy. They would never be conquered. They would fight to the bitter end. And the aliens had learned that the hard way, the aftermath. The world was still. For a brief moment, no one spoke. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and burning remnants of what had once been a thriving city. The roar of the alien warship's explosion still echoed in their minds, but now there was an unsettling quiet. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet, but no new attacks came. No more ships fell from the sky. The world had stopped for just a second. Alvarez stood at the command center's window, looking out over the ruins, his eyes scanning the wreckage of the alien forces scattered across the city. The sky above was an unnatural shade of red, tinged with the glow of the destruction. It was beautiful, in a tragic, apocalyptic way. The hum of the city's survivors, the remnants of humanity who had endured so much, was all that remained. Lisa walked beside him, her footsteps heavy with exhaustion. The battle had taken everything from them: strength, time, comrades, but it had given them something too: a hard-earned victory. She looked out at the same scene, her face tired but filled with determination. "We did it," she said softly, more to herself than to Alvarez. He didn't respond immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the distant horizon, where the final remnants of the alien fleet scattered in retreat. He knew that the victory wasn't as clean as it seemed. The cost was too high. Too many lives had been lost. Too much had been destroyed. This was not the triumphant end to a glorious war. It was a reluctant victory, one born out of sacrifice and unimaginable loss. "We did, but it's not over yet," Alvarez finally said. "The aliens will regroup. They won't forget this defeat. We've made an enemy of the entire galaxy." Lisa looked at him, understanding his words. "What are you suggesting?" "We prepare for the worst," Alvarez replied, his voice steady, though his mind raced with the implications of what he'd just said. Humanity might have won this battle, but this war is far from over. The aliens won't take kindly to what we've just done. He turned to face the room behind them, where the remaining resistance fighters were gathered, some tending to the wounded, others rebuilding what little they could of their shattered defenses. The scars of the battle were etched deeply into the city, but life still remained, life and hope. The human spirit, it seemed, was far from broken. "We've shown the galaxy what we're made of," Alvarez continued, pacing slightly as he spoke. "They thought we were weak. They thought they could crush us, just like every other species before them. But they were wrong. And now we have to be ready for the next move. They'll be coming." Lisa nodded in agreement. "We'll be ready. But we're going to need help. The galaxy knows about us now, and they won't be sitting idle. We need allies." "We'll find them," Alvarez said with conviction. "It's time to take the fight to them. We don't have to wait for them to come to us. Let's show them that Earth is not a target. They're the ones who need to fear us now." The words hung in the air for a moment, and it seemed that every person in the room shared the same thought. The humans had just rewritten the rulebook. They had taken on a force that had crushed civilizations before and come out victorious. The universe now knew one undeniable fact: humanity was not to be underestimated. Not now, not ever again. But there was something more in Alvarez's mind, something deeper, something that gnawed at the back of his thoughts. "How many are left?" he asked, his voice quiet but filled with urgency. Lisa looked down, her expression darkening. There are still survivors, but not many. We've lost entire districts. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of our people. And we're going to need resources. We're running low on supplies. We've got bodies to bury, and the city needs to be rebuilt. Alvarez turned away from the window, facing the remaining fighters in the room. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. This victory had been hard-won, but it was only a fraction of what was to come. We'll rebuild, he said firmly. We'll rebuild, and we'll fight. The aliens think they can break us. They have no idea what they've started. We're not going down without a fight. Not now, not ever. The survivors in the room stood a little straighter, inspired by the words of their leader. The devastation was great, but their resolve was greater. They had seen the true cost of war, and they knew it wasn't over. The war had only just begun. Outside, the city still burned, but through the smoke, humanity stood tall. In the distance, the stars gleamed, distant and cold. But for the first time, humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not weak. They were a force to be reckoned with. And the aliens had learned that lesson the hard way. The battle for survival had been won, but the war for the galaxy was far from over. Humanity had shown the universe what they were capable of. And they would fight, no matter the cost.